So you kind of touched on this earlier, but I want you to go a little deeper. So advice for introverted entrepreneurs, specifically to networking, but let's go in the point of view of how would you navigate an event or venue where you don't know anybody? Literally, you don't know anybody. Hey there, everybody. It's me, Stefan Burchard, the Bowtie Coach, with your latest episode of the Networking Made Simple podcast. Networking Made Simple is an exploration of networking and social business connections for entrepreneurs, but especially introverted entrepreneurs like me. Today, this podcast, I'm speaking with Erin, one of my very dear friends. I forgot the name of your company at the moment because I know it's new. You're no longer at the old one. And I just thought she'd be awesome because she's a crazy, awesome networker. So welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. And networking is so important, but so scary. And especially for someone like me that wears many hats, right? Where I am now, as you referenced, I'm somewhere new, and I'm so excited to be at an amazing nonprofit called Read With Me Volunteer Programs. So we are based in the Coachella Valley, and we are in 26 elementary schools across all 3 school districts. And we have volunteers that go in a minimum of 1 hour a week and help kids learn to read. A lot of them don't have parents at home that have the time or resources to read to them. They may not speak the language or may not have the skill set. So it's a super rewarding job. And so that's one, facet of my networking. And then I also just was installed as president of Leadership Coachella Valley, which you are a recent graduate of, and is something that's very near and dear to my heart. I've been on the board for several years and then taking over as president. And so it's really interesting to be president of one organization and then also trying to recruit volunteers for another. And then I volunteer myself at the local animal shelter. And so if you do hear any animal sounds in the background, could be you, could be me. But I have 2 foster babies here currently, so you may hear them wanting to get in on the networking.
Nice. Cool. Works for me. So, Erin, are you an introvert or an extrovert?
I would like to say I'm an ambivert. I can turn it on when I need to, but I definitely recharge alone. And when I read about the definitions of introvert and extrovert, extroverts are energized by events and they come home and they just, have this plethora of energy, where I come home and crash and me and the dogs, and that's it, right? So I think I'm a little bit of both. I definitely enjoy people, but on my terms. If you told me I had to be somewhere for 8 hours, no thank you. But if I get to be there for 90 minutes and I can pop in and out, I'm good. So I'm going to go with ambivert.
It actually is a term I've heard a couple of times on the show, and actually I call it a situational extrovert. So I am a tried and true introvert like you. I need to be alone to recharge, and being around big groups for long periods of time drains the crap out of me, and then I need to be alone or in my space. So, however, like you, I can turn it on.
Yes.
But with me, I find myself challenged if it's like a new environment where I don't know a lot of people. Then I tend to be back a little and a little bit more in my shell.
I get that, but I was born and raised here in the Coachella Valley. So being here 44 years, it's kind of hard to find new situations. Or there's very few rooms where I haven't seen a friendly face or someone that I've ran into or connected with prior. But I think, like you said, it's the energy, right? Like, how do you feel at the end of those interactions? And for me, I just want to go home and curl up with a good book. I definitely am not like, let's go to the 2nd or 3rd or 4th location. I'm not that friend.
How would you define business networking?
Oh man. Networking sounds scary, right? Like that word alone, you think of networks, that already sounds like something I don't understand. Like I know Wi-Fi exists, but I have no idea how it works. But when I think of networks, I think building connections and building blocks. So I'd say it's all about relationships. And if networking sounds scary to anyone, just go in and find one person that you may have something in common with. It may be, oh my gosh, I love their pink shoes. It may be, I really enjoy some of their social media content that I've seen before, or something to that effect, something that you have some commonality with. And then just if you can make one connection, you network successfully, because you could get business cards from 10 people at an event, but if you don't remember them, they don't remember you didn't learn something about them, then it's not really networking. So I would say focus on connection versus the word networking.
That's awesome. You have actually jumped ahead a little. That's okay. Why is business networking essential for us as entrepreneurs? And I mean, even in your nonprofit world, it's still important.
It's essential to everything. And I think especially where we live, right? we have very interesting demographics here in the Coachella Valley, completely different than when I lived in San Diego or, to bigger cities. So we still do a lot of things by warm introductions, right? Like emailing and cold calling doesn't necessarily work here. People want you to say, oh, Stefan referred me, and so I'm so excited to connect with you. And that works here. And so it's paramount here more than anywhere else, I would say, because people don't want just a Google ad. People don't want to search. People want an actual referral. Like even when you see stuff on social media, people still crowdsource a lot here. They want someone that's done the work for them, someone that they've worked with that has a good personal experience, not, oh, someone had 5-star Yelp or 5-star Google reviews. It's like, no. I want to know who did this at your home, or who recommended like Leadership Coachella Valley. What kind of experience did you have? What did you gain from this program? Not just all digital. And so that's why networking is paramount here versus anywhere else, which can be even more intimidating to someone that's an introvert, hearing that, oh my gosh, you can't just do those things. But I think it's an amalgamation, right? Like you have to have the digital component. You have to be up with technology. Podcasts are a great way to connect, right? That's kind of like one-sided. You can listen to podcasts and learn if you're not feeling like interacting, or maybe use it as motivation on your way to your next event. But very important here. And especially in the nonprofit space, I think I've always been involved in volunteering in nonprofits and on boards. And now that I work for one, it's energizing, but there are so many out here. Everybody is competing for the same dollars, the same volunteers, the same, you can throw what would they say is my grandpa would say, throw a cat and hit something, but like swing a cat and hit an event. Like during season, there's 5 in one night. You have to pick which charity you want to support. Yeah. And that's where those connections come into play. If someone personally invites you, someone that is invested in the mission and volunteering there every week, you can count on them. Just like if I said, Stefan, we're doing something for my animal shelter. It's a really fun event. And he's like, my goodness, she is there every week, day in, day out for years and years. Like this is an event I want to support versus something I just saw on Eventbrite.
How has business networking impacted your journey so far? And I suspect your current position is a direct result of networking connections.
Ding, ding, ding. It absolutely is. A huge catalyst for my personal journey was going through the Leadership Coachella Valley program. I was actually accepted in the program 5 or 6 years ago. My employer had said that they were on board, and then they reneged on that. And it is a time commitment to be away from your job. Even though you are doing development work, you are not in your role. You are developing yourself and your leadership skills. So I had to postpone that for a year. Then the pandemic happened. I had to postpone another year. And then I got accepted in between jobs. And my previous employer was like, you could do the program, but we're not paying for it. So I did the investment myself. And that's actually how I came upon my new role. When you get to connect with others and work with them in that capacity in a room full of powerhouse people across every industry you could imagine, you're exposed to jobs that I didn't even know exist, right? And so being out in the community and sharing what I love about this program, there really is no downside to my job, and I love it. And I served on a board with my current boss, and through networking, when this position was created, he had reached out and said, I think you'd be great for this. Would you like to apply? And I jumped at the chance, knowing I loved the mission of the organization, and I'd already worked well with someone in the organization. And if I hadn't, done extensive networking, really made those connections, I probably, would have let it pass me by. And so networking does so much more than grow your business. It helps you lift others up and bring them along with you. And especially now, I have a lot of younger, I always say kids, but I have some younger folks with me at the organization, and mentoring them has been such a amazing thing. When I'm like, hey, would you like to come to this networking event with me? They're like, oh, no, we don't do that. We post on Snapchat, or we, you know what I mean? We DM people. We don't actually talk to them or go out. And so making sure they know how to shake hands, making sure they have their business cards, or that they've ordered business cards if they haven't gone to events prior. Just some basic kind of old school techniques that still really work. Yeah. And it's really neat to have 2 generations at an event too, and see how we do it differently, and then come back together and kind of powwow about how the event went, and having 2 different experiences. And then also using them as a mentor, right? You can have mentors that are younger than you, and I suggest everybody does, and asking them, like, what would you like to see at an event? What would make you want to go to something like this? Like, yes, I invited you to this, but if you were to invite me to something, what would that look like? And then shift and plan your upcoming programming around what they would want it, how they would want to network.
Are you feeling overwhelmed lately, frazzled and unproductive? Well, you're not alone. This is where coaching can come into play. As your Bowtie coach, I specialize in helping introverted entrepreneurs navigate these waters. Together, we can tailor a self-care and business strategy that fits your unique personality and business goals, ensuring you don't just survive, but thrive. Click the link below to get a discovery call time with me, and let's explore together. Bye. What a concept. Put an exclamation point on that one. Younger mentors. That's brilliant.
But it's true, right? Like when you're like, oh my gosh, so, we've all been in that position probably, like with it, especially with the aging parent population, or who's going to fix my remote, or who deleted my email, and like, we don't want to be that. We want to be self-sufficient. And so a lot of times they have really good time hacks, or, oh yeah, don't even bother with that. Nobody's on there anymore. Don't use that platform. So I've gotten a lot of great feedback, but they want to be asked. So
interesting. Because now I'm remembering back when I was younger, in the early 2000s, I started using Macs or Apple products, and my mom would always call me about anything Apple, anything web. And basically she was looking to me as a younger mentor, because I still am very technically savvy. So interesting. I like that.
I found it beneficial for sure.
So you kind of touched on this earlier, but I want you to go a little deeper. So advice for introverted entrepreneurs, specifically to networking, but let's go in the point of view of how would you navigate an event or venue where you don't know anybody? Literally, you don't know anybody.
Well, I would even start before that, because I have a really good friend that I tag team with, and we will hold each other accountable. And so we are in different business areas, right? Like we're complementary, but we're not competitors in any ways. And so I'll say, hey, are you going to this event? She'll be like, oh, I don't know if I have it in me. And she'll call me in the same vein and say, are you going to this? I'm like, oh, my schedule's kind of tight today, but we really push each other and hold each other accountable. And then we know we're more likely to go when you do have that buddy system. Yeah. And then it is easier sometimes to physically walk into a space when you have someone but then we make sure we divide and conquer. Because if we stay together, we're just going to chat and we're not going to network. But so sometimes even that, or carpooling, right? Like it makes it okay, well, we're going to stay at least an hour. And then you put that in the calendar. You have a calendar invite with a human, not just this nebulous event that you might want to attend, or maybe you can make an excuse to not go, right? We all get busy and the day gets away from us. And all these events seem to be in the evenings lately. So I would definitely say take a buddy. If you don't have the buddy system available, definitely still the calendar invite. Make sure you register for it. Make sure there's skin in the game. Make sure you have your notifications set up so that you're like mentally preparing, right? And I also love listening to something motivational on the way to an event. So whether that's the School of Greatness podcast, whether that's, listening to like James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits, which is like one of my favorite books. It's like dog-eared and highlighted. And I have the audiobook too. I'm old school, but I'm the technology as well. I try to listen to something, or John C. Maxwell, like these great communicators that always have nuggets of wisdom. So even if it's a 10-minute podcast on a short commute, I still have that in my brain, as opposed to thinking about what I'm going to eat for dinner after. Did I forget to take the puppy out to go to the bathroom before we left? All these things that run through my head. At least I'm filling it with techniques or conversation points, or even listening to the Wall Street Journal podcast on the way there and having a topic that's timely and maybe non-controversial on the way to an event, so that I have something like, oh my gosh, did you hear what happened to blah, blah, blah about the airport expansion in Palm Springs? Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. We have a direct flight to Washington, D.C. and Nashville now, whatever it may be. But so that you already have talking points, so that you're not going in so scared. Yeah. You're going in prepared.
Yeah. I tell my students in Networking for Introverts, a class I teach, I tell them just that. Have your questions. Have like 3 questions prepared and memorized. And I like what you said, some current event that's not the weather. It's not politics. It's like, this is serious local informational news. That's important,
Yes. And I also think, mindset going in. I've been in sales before. And so you're told you have to sell. And I am not that person naturally. And so being in a nonprofit role, I love it because I get to go in and educate. I am there to share what we do.
Yeah.
And if you're interested, then I will give you the information, but I'm not here to shove it down your throat. I'm
Yeah.
here to share about this program. And if you're like, oh my gosh, that's incredible, tell me more, I can whip out my QR code. We can chat. We can say, table this. Here's my card. Like there's so many places we can go from there. But I like to share stories about personal experience from volunteering, or I like to share the impact that we've made because we have data. It's data driven with test scores that have improved. But I really think that if you go into share as opposed to like, what am I going to get out of this? It's like, what can I give going in? That's a whole different mindset too. And it's not as anxiety ridden, right? Like I'm literally going and sharing about something I care about. I'm not like, oh my gosh, I have to get 3 new clients at this business, or I want to get 15 new business cards, whatever it may be. But if you're going in to share and learn as opposed to what can I get, I think that helps too with like that mindset shift.
Yes. And BNI, we call that giver's gain.
Yes, I like that.
So what challenges have you experienced in the past? Something, not just a little challenge, a serious challenge. And what did you do to cope with that or overcome that?
I've had some serious challenges hosting networking events in a prior role where technology went out and we didn't have the invite list and we couldn't see who paid. And, like right from the get-go, people are having a horrible experience when they get there. Like there's a line a million things long and the air conditioning is not working. And they're like, you don't know who I am. And it's like a board member who should be recognized, but they don't come to much. So you haven't seen them before. And so I immediately always try to make light of the situation and connect. Like, I am so sorry. Like, own it. I am so sorry. I know the air conditioning sucks. Here's a hand fan, right? Or, we're just getting you ready for the summer in the desert. Here's a little precursor. I apologize. Our technology is down. We are so grateful you're here. Let's, circle back after the event. We're just going to get you in the door. I think just being honest and being yourself, if you're trying to be something you're not, when there's a challenge, it comes through immediately. If it's like, we have everything under control, this isn't a big deal, just like keep acting like nothing happened, people can see through that. And so if you're making jokes or, you're, wringing out the sweat out of your shirt or whatever it might be, I think that being honest is the way to go, and just admit if there's a screw up. When there's a challenge, just be like, I own it, you guys, this is not how we planned it. Or I just think that that's really important. And then people respect that when they're like, oh my gosh, like they made the most of that, or you wouldn't believe how this person handled that. And I think that being honest and authentic in that case, I do think authentic is overused all the time these days, but just being yourself and don't let chaos get the best of you. There's always going to be something that can and will go wrong. So make the most of it. And if you can make a new friend out of it, then great. At least you showed up.
How do you pick a new venue or event? What's important to you?
Well, scheduling, right? Like I try to go, we do have a lot of chambers here in the desert, which is great. But if you're looking at your calendar, that can be kind of overwhelming to an extrovert, let alone an introvert. Like it's pretty daunting. Yeah. So I will try to pick, something on the east end of the valley that month, something on the west end of the valley, something in the middle. I'll try to make sure I have a lunch meeting in there so that it's not all evenings and I don't feel like I can't make it to yoga or the dog park or those things that really fill my cup. And so I really try to schedule that mindfully at the beginning of the month. Things do pop up. You get, last minute invites, people cancel to something, or someone says, hey, can you come with me to this? And it sounds really interesting. But I do try to mindfully plan so that I'm not doing everything in Palm Springs and nothing in Indio. I also like going to places I haven't been to before. Growing up here, I've been to a lot of the tried and true locations, but when I see that there's a new business, I automatically want to support small business and show up and, talk to the owner, get to know them, their story, like where you and I were just at Hot Lips, which just opened in Cathedral City. And it's our first local coffee shop. Like, how cool is that? That someone that grew up here, moved away, then moved back to the desert and was like, I want a space for community connection and coffee that isn't corporate. And so of course I want to support someone like that, hearing that, right? And then you go in and it's beautiful and it's inspiring and the artwork is vibrant and colorful. Like, now I'm going to tell people to meet me there to network because that was a beautiful space. But because I learned her story, that's somewhere I want to go. So definitely I think, you'd say emotional equity, or you're building that in where something is interesting, but also inspired. A lot of things can be pretty, but what's the story behind it?
Yeah. People remember stories.
And also don't be afraid to say no. I mean, there's times that there's 4 or 5 things a day during season, and it's like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen my partner in 2 days, or I haven't gone grocery shopping, whatever it is. Like, you got to take care of yourself first. So never feel obligated to network. You can make it up, or you can come to the last half of something. Don't feel like you have to be there all 3 hours. Or if you know there's going to be 600 or 700 people there and you're not really going to make a connection, don't feel obligated to go just because you've gone a couple years in a row. So don't be afraid to say no. Like, your time is your most valuable resource. So if you feel that time would be better spent and you're going to go and be in a bad mood, don't subject yourself to that. Yeah. That's fine. There's no guilt and there's no shame though.
Yeah. You've already touched on mindset when talking about, Leadership Coachella Valley, as well as listening to podcasts, and you held up a book, which leads us to the next question. Do you have we were getting in personal now. So it's like, do you have a go-to book or resource for inspiration?
I do. I'm kind of a nerd like that. I really enjoy learning about the mind and the science behind it. So like Mindset by Carol Dweck and then Atomic Habits by James Clear are 2 favorites of mine. Carol Dweck even has a cute little 10-minute mini TED Talk about mindset and going in with a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. So fixed mindset would be, I'm going into this, I'm an extrovert, I can nail this, and I'm going to, convert every single person in this room into a customer. Or introvert fixed mindset would be, I don't know anybody, I'm going to have a terrible time. This is just going to be excruciating, like pulling teeth the whole hour I'm there. I don't even want to be there. And if you go in with a growth mindset, what can I learn? What can I gain from this experience? At least let me see this new location, or let me end up on this side of town, or maybe I'll make a new friend today. Maybe someone likes the same kind of music I do, and there's a concert coming up I really want to go to, and I don't have someone to go with. If you go with that, wide open expectation of how great can this be, then your mindset's going to be primed and ready to meet new people and connect with new people. If you're already going in with a fixed mindset about all the things that could go wrong, you're going to get nowhere. But yes, I did hold up this book. This book is so dog-eared. Atomic Habits, anybody I recommend, and I've read it and reread it, and it's timeless. But just even things like habit stacking. Like I said, if I know I'm going to an event, I make sure I have my business cards with me, right? Because I speak for myself. I change purses a lot, or whatever bag I'm carrying. And I have multiple business cards based on nonprofit work or leadership or animal shelter stuff, right? So I make sure I'm prepared with my materials. And then I listen. Then my next habit that I stack, I get in the car and I turn off the music and I put on something motivational. I listen to an audiobook. I could listen to a chapter on this. But just even moving the needle 1%. He talks about if you do something 1% better at this event, or 1% better today, or you shoot off one more email, you're already ahead of the game. So I do think mindset is everything. Also, are you someone wants to be around? Like, think about that. If someone's constantly pushing or trying to sell or asking what you can do for them, that's probably not the mindset you want to connect with, or you're not going to really help elevate their business either. When someone's like, who would you recommend? You're like, ooh, this person might not be happy if I send them their way. And they're going to be like, goodness gracious, what a disaster that was. So yeah. I think mindset is everything.
How do you bookend your days? So like, how do you begin your day? How do you end your day?
Which if you would have told me that when I was like 21, I would not have believed you. I wanted to be the free spirit. But I really, I struggle. I have ADHD. And so I really have to adhere, or else like I lose time, right? It could be 4 hours and I'm still sitting there. So I usually wake up every day around 5. I have a puppy that wakes me up to let me know she has to go out. So it's not optional, even on weekends. And then I sit outside, wait for the sunlight to kind of open my eyes with my coffee, just enjoy the sights and sounds of our beautiful desert that we can be outside 10 months out of the year in the morning. And then I come in and I meditate and I journal. I set up my calendar for the day. I write my goals. I track my habits if there's something I'm working on. I have multiple spinal cord injuries, so I have to make sure I have my mobility. I have to make sure my chiropractor stuff is scheduled. I have to make sure my pain management, all that stuff is dialed in. And when I do that at the beginning of the day, I feel like I own the day. If I just kind of wake up willy-nilly and start doing stuff, I feel like the day owns me. I get an email that's urgent. I do this, I do that, but I never check email the first hour or 2 of the day. I make sure that my morning is mine, whether it's meditating and journaling and sometimes even coloring, but just figuring out like what kind of day I want to have and setting the tone for the day, and then planning accordingly as opposed to having other people's demands kind of set my day up. That really helps me stay in a good mindset and just kind of conquer the day. But then the day varies vastly. I could be all over the place. I could be working from home all day. I have a hybrid position. So sometimes I'm here, there, everywhere. It could be at any of our school sites at all 3 school districts, which is always so fun. And I'm really grateful for that, because you're not on technology. When you're with the kids, you are present and you are reading and you are not on your phone. And it is just absolute magic to like put that down for an hour or 2. Oh my gosh. If everybody can do that as part of their day, highly recommend. I feel like my best version of myself when I don't have my phone and I'm not like twitching to check a notification, right? And then I bookend my day by putting my phone on Do Not Disturb. When it's like 7 p.m., there's nothing urgent. There's, unless it's fire, flood, or blood, like don't bother me after 7 p.m. because my phone is off. I am usually taking the dogs for a walk or at the dog park. I like to cook something healthy. I either have gone to yoga or Pilates, or I'm just getting home from it. But I really have to be mindful of my health, because that's such a huge part of energy. When I'm not feeling well or I'm in a lot of pain, I feel like I could sleep 12 hours a day. So I really have to make sure that I'm taking care of myself. And if I have a networking event that evening, then that just means I push everything a little bit later. So then I get home at 7 or 8 p.m. and then I start that whole same process. But I really find consistency to be helpful, and it makes it that much easier to turn it on, right? Like when you feel cared for and nourished and set up for success by your habits, you're able to step into that role that you need to a little bit easier. And then you can come down from it. It's like a slow landing, right? And I love sleep. So I'm usually in bed by 9, reading an actual book, like paper books. When you get tired, you just kind of doze off, as opposed to having a screen and blue light in your face. So I'm a voracious reader. I love reading.
I love reading.
Reading has been a really good connection tool, not necessarily in the networking space, but my mom lives 8 hours away. And as she ages, there's kind of less we can do together. She can't really travel a whole lot anymore, can't like walk long distances or hike or those kind of things, right? And growing up in an active family, that's a big shift for us. And so her and I read the same book. So it's like a book club of 2. And so when we chat or text, it was like, oh my gosh, did you read chapter 12 yet? And it's like, no, I didn't. Don't tell me. Or I can't believe she did that. Or it's just been a really beautiful connection point for us. Nice. And you can do that with anybody, right? Like you could have a leadership book club. You could have a real estate book club. You could have a networking for nonprofits book club. But just reading is such a special tool, because 2 people can read the exact same content and get something completely different out of it. Yeah. And everybody's valid. So reading is, my heart. So I guess working for Read With Me makes absolute sense that I'm on the right path because of what it's done for me.
So thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with me today. How can people get a hold of you? I'm going to have contact information in the show notes, but how would you like people to reach out to you?
I'm on Instagram the most of all the social media platforms. So it's Hyland Air Bear, and it has all my information if you want to learn how to volunteer with Read With Me, or if you want to apply for next year's Leadership Coachella Valley class. We are just beginning to kick off this year, and it's a year-long program. But readwithmevolunteer.org is how you get a hold of us. And all we ask is 1 hour a week to change 2 lives, not just the student that you mentor, but yours as well.
Nice.
And Erin Hyland on all of the socials, all the platforms, and it's Hyland, Hyland. Extra Irish.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time, Erin. You have a great day.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.